Hi, welcome to week 6 of MAE 508, and we're going to go over some slides. I'm now recording, and let me share a screen with you here, and we'll get started. Okay, you should see the screen that says Teaching Subject Matter with Technology, and so we'll just go through the slides, and let's see, I just skipped one. Okay, to start with, I hope you've been reading the textbook, and I wanted to go through a little summary of chapters 1 through 10. One of the things that has been pointed out by the author Spector is there will surely be new technologies, and that is so true. The technologies that I learned when I was getting my master's degree are still being used, but there's so many new technologies out there and so many new ways to teach with those technologies. An example of that would be coding. I did not teach my kids, or there weren't any courses to teach children how to code. And now I teach kids how to make apps for their phones. And so that's a new technology that's come along. And so instead of having them just use technology, they're using how to create programs, which I think is really, really cool. It says that these technologies will come with particular affordances, and that is so true. And when you talk to the younger generations, they'll tell you about that. And to make effective use of new technologies, we'll probably need to facilitate changes in the educational setting. So think about that. How does that change the classroom setup, the desk, where the students sit? All those kinds of things are things that you need to think about as technologies change. Now going on to chapter 11, I wanted to bring out just a few points. And here's a saying that I got from Leo Tolstoy, the Russian writer. He says, everyone thinks of changing the world, but no one thinks of changing himself. And I think that's so true sometimes, that sometimes we get so involved in changing everything as a whole that we don't look inside ourselves and say, what can we do to change ourselves? And in doing so, we can change the world. So that's just a thing to think about. Here are some other thoughts here from the chapter. There are at our disposal amazing and powerful tools and technologies to support learning and instruction, and new ones are emerging at a rapid rate. One of the things I do to keep up on those things is I go to annual conferences, or sometimes several times a year I go to conferences, and I learn about the new technologies that are out there. And most of the conferences I go to have what's called a vendors hall or whatever, where different vendors who sell different technologies come out and they show teachers what new technologies are out there for the classroom. And I've gotten lots of ideas from those vendors. And so it's really good to go to those. Also, it says, as with any intervention process, it is wise to begin by determining what problems exist. So if you're thinking about getting new technology or whatever it is, what are the problems? What needs to be fixed? What things actually need to be purchased, or what are the needs? Not so much what needs to be purchased, but what are the problems and what are the solutions to fix them? Okay. Then think about the technology and how it could support and actually help to solve the problems. Technology in and of itself cannot actually solve learning challenges. Another idea from chapter 11 is innovators who will drive the change process may or may not be members of the community. So that could be, as you apply this to education, it could be that there are people who invent things for other reasons, and they might not be educators. It might be in the business world they create something. And something that has been created is QR codes. And those were created for business. And I'll show you one. Well, this is actually a scan right here on this, right here. But you can actually use these in education as well. to actually scan things and target things. And I'll tell you later in another webinar how we use those in education. It says early adopters who are nearly always willing to try out new things. And there are early adopters, and I was one of those early adopters. I'd try out just about anything. And iPods is what I started with, and went on from there. And when you're an early adopter, you have to be creative, and you have to think of ways that you can actually use those technologies to increase learning. That's the whole goal, to increase student learning. And then it says late majority, who are generally skeptical of change and new ideas, are only adopt an innovation when the vast majority are already regular users. An example of that would be years ago when I was teaching teachers how to use email. And I had a couple teachers in our school who said, that's not going to work. We're going to have to use memos and still send them with students to classroom because I'm not going to check my email all the time. And I would rather get my communication with a little note taped or stapled, given to a student, and go from door to door that way. Well, you know how long that lasted. Okay, technology deployment techniques. And here is a little graph that I saw that I thought would be interesting here about how innovators, there's just a few innovators that start, then there's early adapters of technology, there's early and late majority, and then resistors. And you can see that there's just a few innovators that start out, but as the trend goes, then there will be a point where a lot of people, a lot of educators or people in general will adopt certain modes of technology. And that's really kind of good to know. There was something else I was going to mention here about deployment techniques. One thing was when we first came out with iPods, we got a class set of 20, and we had a lot of different problems that arose, like how do you charge 20 of them? And how do you, how do you keep them sorted? How do you, keep them straight, and all these kinds of things. And because of that, we had all different kinds of techniques that kind of rose out of those problems. For example, one of the things was to put a label on every single iPod, and then check it out to a certain student, so John had number 1 and Ann had number 2, and so forth, so that at the end of the day, if something was wrong with one of the devices, you knew which student had that particular device. But at the very beginning, it was just like pass them out and pass them back in. We never thought that anything would go wrong with them, or students, something could happen, or whatever. But now they have iPod and iPad and laptop charging carts, and they lock up, and so a lot of things have happened since those devices have been deployed. Okay, let's go to chapter 12. Here's another saying from John Dewey, 1916. If we teach today as we taught yesterday, we rob our children of tomorrow. And I think that's so profound, in that John Dewey said this in 1916. And I think it still pertains today. We need to teach children differently today than we taught them yesterday, and we need to get them ready for tomorrow. Let me go back to this. One of the things that I've learned or seen through my many years of being in education is that it used to be students were supposed to sit at their desk and be quiet and do their work and be tested on pencil and paper and multiple choice tests. Now it's changed in that we do a lot of collaborative work, and a lot of the assessments are done on project-based assessments versus paper and pencil. And I think that's so much closer. It's closing the gap between what children need to know for the future and how they're going to work in the workplace. So anyway, that's an observation I've made, and things are going to change in the future as well. I'm not really sure how, but they do change. Here's some more ideas. Be thoughtful, be flexible, and you'll be fine. And that's an idea from Spectre. And I think that's so true. Whatever it is in education or whatever you do, even if it's in the workplace, you need to be thoughtful, flexible, and be open to new ideas and more efficient and effective ways to do things. In the chapter, they talked about Moore's Law, and it's about the doubling of computer power about every 2 years. And what has happened is we've found that it happens even faster than every 2 years. And it says it's at some point it would reach a limit. And but things, it just seems to be more and more breakthroughs that happen that make technology ever, getting better and better. It says it is quite possible that we will no longer be talking about personal computers in 2017 or 2022. I don't know what we'll be talking about, but that's a thought from Spectre there. It says, why mention Moore's Law? To point out an optimism with regard to technology that may be unfounded. It says, we have not seen such doubling in learning outcomes or teaching productivity. So that's, even though technology has gotten so much better and so much more powerful, we're not seeing the learning effect, that students are not learning at double the rate or having an increased learning capacity. So it doesn't equally correlate. And we're wondering, should it? Maybe it should. But studies show that it's not. Indeed, many of the promises of educational technologists have not been attained. So when they say, when a company says that they can increase reading level through going through their software program or whatever, and they make promises, it might not happen. And it's all dependent on a lot of independent factors. So you have to realize that when you go about considering or purchasing technology. Here's another thought. Some thought that the internet would result in the disappearance of schools because people could learn everything off the internet and they wouldn't need a teacher. So that hasn't happened. Here's another thought from the chapter. The underlying promise that has been made over the years by many educational technology advocates is that simply adopting a particular technology and integrating its use into instruction will lead to dramatic improvements. That's not always true. And just because you have every student in your school has access to a laptop doesn't mean that test scores will go up, that students' learning performance will increase. It takes a lot more than that. Okay. I'm going to show you a design model for educational technology, and it's called the ADDIE model. And it's how, this is a basic design in how you design curriculum or how you design professional development or how do you design any type of learning and reevaluate and then redesign. So when you design something, like you design a lesson or whatever, you think about it in your head, you might write down an outline or a sketch, you develop the lesson plan or whatever, you implement it, you see how the students react, you analyze it, and then the next semester, the next year, you redesign it. Now, I want to add in this, that into this ADDIE model should be a pre-assessment of what the students already know before you even start to design. And then in the analysis should actually be a post-assessment as to how effective your lesson or whatever was. And as you integrate technology into your curriculum, you need to remember all of these steps and to to regularly evaluates in the middle, regularly evaluate how effective these teaching strategies are, and be flexible to revise them, even as you go around the evolution circle here of developing curriculum. That's so, so important. Digital natives are students who were born after 1970. Some say after 1980. Those are the ones that have grown up with technology their whole lives. Digital immigrants were born before 1970, and I was born before 1970. And those are ones who grew up, and I went all the way through college without a computer. The best I had was an electric typewriter and a pocket calculator. So there's a difference there between those two. You can clump them into generations and how they learn and how they interact with technology devices, computer devices. So we have teacher implications, and I'm going to just go over this briefly. And there's also, let's see if I have student implications. I don't. This is the end of the slides here, but I wanted to go over, there's a difference of you as a teacher. If you are a digital native or a digital immigrant, there's going to be a little difference in the way that you come across your teaching plans and whatever, and just be aware of that. It's not that it's better to be one or the other. Just be aware that there's different phases of learning and integrating, and you'll need to know that, especially as you interact with other peers in the educational faculty, that there's going to be a little bit of a difference there. Okay. Always keep mind on what you want to focus on in the classroom and what the learning objectives are. Stay close to your content standards and what you're supposed to teach, but at the same time, as I emphasize again and again, pre-assess, find out what your students know, and then go on to what you need to teach them, okay? And then reevaluate. Okay. The last thing on here is, how does implementing new technologies change the way you teach and how students learn? It's something to think about. When I integrated iPods into my classroom, it made me change, but over a gradual amount of time. At first, I was just using the iPod like I'd use a piece of paper and pencil, but they were just typing into it. But then I learned to actually use it as a different way of learning and a different media for them to learn with. Okay, I'm going to unshare the screen here. Okay, and now we're going to go into what we needed to do this week. And I'm going to be looking over on our content here. And we had a discussion question. And it says, choose a technology resource from the list that is listed there: BrainPop, ClassDojo, Nearpod, Educreations, Keynote, Prezi, Haiku Deck, or iMovie, or any other technology resource that you know. And how would you, or how could you incorporate it into your teaching practice? What would the learners benefit from that technology and why? And so if you don't have the opportunity to actually embrace one of those, then go ahead and just research it and go ahead and post about that particular technology resource, and that would be good. I want to skip over to week 7 a little bit because we have a key assignment coming up, and I want to skip down to what is expected. I think this key assignment is one of the most useful key assignments and most rewarding ones. The students that have done it have really enjoyed doing it, and Some of them have decided to take it all the way and actually make a grant proposal for this. So let me share screen here and get it up for you. Okay. Okay, the assignment prompt for this is key assignment 3. It's due the Sunday of week 7. It says, create a proposal for your leadership team to purchase and incorporate new technology. So in other words, you're going to, it's like you're saying to your principal, hey, my class would really benefit from a class set of laptops. And this is the kind we want, and these are the things we're going to do on the laptops, and it's going to increase learning because blah, blah, blah. So you're going to use these bullet points here as headings or subheadings for your paper. And some students have actually found grants and actually have filled them out. And like I actually, part-time, I wasn't, an actual grant writer, but in my education experience, I noted that my students needed new laptop computers and they needed a certain type because I taught programming. And so I went ahead and wrote a grant. I wrote several grants, but the one biggie that I want to share with you is a grant that I got brand new laptop computers for my entire class so that they could learn how to code, do computer programming. And it was just a wonderful experience for the students. And I had to write up all these kinds of things. I had to have research-based justification. Why would the laptops help your classroom? What are you going to do with them? I had to state a timeline as to what was going to happen when, the training that was needed, how I was going to get training, how were the students going to get training, what were the projected outcomes, measurable outcomes, and a budget. Outcomes are like, okay, 80% of my students will increase their reading level by so many points or whatever it is. And that will be assessed by whatever assessment plan you have. So what I'm going to do this week is I'm going to email you a copy of the grant that I was got awarded, and you can look it over for an ideas. And it's not the actual assignment, but it is an actual grant that you will learn from to kind of get an idea of how to get funding for technology in your classroom. Because there's nothing worse than you take a cooking class and they talk about all this stuff you could do with a convection oven or whatever, and you go home and you go, I don't have a convection oven. So I don't want you to take this course and think, wow, I learned about all these different things I could do in my classroom with technology, and then I don't have a class set of laptops for my kids. Well, I want to teach you how you can go about to find sources of funding, federal, state, local, business funding, to get computers for your school or for your classroom. Start with your classroom and go from there. Okay? So that's the scoop with that. And I have let's see if I can pull this up really quick here. Okay. I just want to share this one. Let's see if I can just present this one. Get this bigger on the screen here. Okay. I just want to show you that this is a page from the grant application, and there's different measurements. It says, how will you measure the success of the project? Provide specific desired outcomes and how those will be measured. So I put measurement 1, number of students served by the project. There were 858 students in grades 5 through 8, and I said they will all participate in my computer science lab. Measurement 2. Students will complete a survey on career choices before and after participating in the 12-week computer science course, and the measure was By the end of the 12-week course, we hope to see 20% growth in the number of students who select computer science as a career goal. And that did happen. It was really exciting to see the students' responses to the surveys. Then I'm going to go to measure 4 because it's more understandable. Evaluate student projects using a teacher-created rubric based on the new Common Core standards. It says 80% of the student projects will score above 90%. So using the new technology, the new laptops, they were going to do some student projects, and 80% of the students would get an A or better. And that happened too. It happened, and it was wonderful to see. So you need to write up some expectations that you have, and measurable would be in percentages and numbers and whatever. And that's what I mean by that. Okay? So let's see if I have anything else I want to share with you. I used to give webinars once a week, and now I'm trying to do it every other week to kind of be more careful of your time and everything. Here's a quick budget of what everything costs and everything for that, and I'll send that to you. Yeah, let's see if there's anything else I want to bring up. Okay, we'll go over that another time. Well, I know I want to go over these. These are really good. This is from week 7 slides, but I want to go over this. It says, technology may be the backbone of one-to-one programs, but it should not take the spotlight of learning goals. And outcomes require equal attention. So just remember that when you do get laptops, tablets, whatever it is in your classroom, and you start using those are not the highlight of the program. The highlight are still the learning goals, and that's the core element of your teaching practices. And I have the references on the side to back up these. Here's another good one. In a technology-rich classroom, students don't learn technology. Technology merely provides the tools to be used for authentic learning. It is a means and not an end. So it's not that students are supposed to get really good at knowing what all the buttons do on a computer, or how to change all the settings, or those kinds of things. They're supposed to use computers as a tool, and in that way that they will be able to meet their learning goals and excel beyond places that they could have before without technology. And that is what your goal is when you integrate technology into the classroom. So I love teaching this subject. I love having technology in the classroom, and I haven't always, so I just treat it like it's a real special thing to have technology in the classroom, and for you to be teachers in this day and age where most, let's say like half of all the classrooms that of the teachers that I teach do have some type of laptops or tablets or something in your classroom where you can integrate those tools into the student learning environment. And it's so wonderful. It's so magnificent that instead of having a classroom set of encyclopedias that all the students are trying to use at the same time, they have whatever they want to learn in their cell phone, in their tablet, in their computer. And it's just a joy and a privilege for them to be able to have those tools. And it's such a responsibility for you as a teacher to teach them that they should be used in the right way. And that used in the right way, they can gain wonderful knowledge that will help them throughout their lives and forever. Not just in educational ways, but they can learn to look up things about anything. But you need to be the one that teaches them how to find a trusted source, where to go, how to do it, and how to be wise in their choices, and to inspire them to know that things are changing and they will need to have their their minds open for new technologies to come. Okay? Our last webinar will be week 8. And if you have any questions or any particular things that you would like me to go over, just let me know, and we'll go from there. Okay? Thank you so much. Bye-bye now.